Skeleton on the Dunny. All right, so you want to hear the story of the ghost on the Dunny. Everybody wants to know about it, so I'm going to tell it for the last time. I'll put it on this tape recording. Someone else can write it down. My spelling's not too good. And anyway, I haven't got time for a lot of writing. Now, I'm giving you a warning. This is not a polite story. If your feelings get hurt, it'll be your own fault. I call a spade, and I call a dunny a dunny. Now, if you live in Australia, you know what a dunny is. It's a toilet, a lavatory. Other names for it are throne, loo, WC, jerry, and thunderbox. I've heard it called other things, but I won't mention them here. I'm not a rude person. I just get to the point. Now, some dunnies are outside. An outside dunny is usually at the bottom of the garden, a long way from the house. And if it rains, you get wet. If it's night time, you have to get a torch and go out there in the dark. And when you've finished, you have to pull a chain to make it flash. There's no buttons or anything flash like that. Anyway, I must get back to the story. It all started when I was 14 years old. My parents died in a car accident. I went to live with my auntie Flo. She lived in the country, at Timboon. I was pretty broken up. Miserable, in fact. One minute I was happy as Larry with a mother and a father living in a big house in the city. The next minute I was with Auntie Flo in the bush. Auntie Flo was nice. It wasn't her fault. I just felt low because of what happened. That sort of thing's very hard to take. My new home was very old. It was a big wooden house with a veranda all around it. It had a tin roof. You could hear the rain falling on it at night. Inside the house, it was very dark, gloomy. Every doorway had wooden beads hanging down on strings. There were old photos all over the walls, pictures of glum men staring down at you. In the hall was a tall clock, a grandfather clock. It ticked loudly. The house was so quiet you could hear the ticking in every room. For some reason, you always felt like whispering. It was like a library. School had finished. It was the holidays. There wasn't much to do. I didn't know anybody in the town, so most days I went hunting rabbits or snakes. Auntie Flo was very good to me. She liked me. "Bob," she would say, "you need fattening up." She made jam tarts and little cakes with icing and set them up on the table with these neat napkins. She was a very good cook and very old. She didn't know much about boys, so she let me go wherever I liked. She only had one rule: be home for tea on time. I liked Auntie Flo, but I didn't like her outside dunny. One day, Auntie Flo took me aside. She was waving a bit of paper and she looked very serious. "It's very sad about your parents, Bob," she said. "I am worried about your future. If I die, there will be no one to look after you." She was a good-hearted old girl. A tear ran down her face. "Anyway," she said, "I've made some plans. Now, this is my will. It tells what'll happen to my things if I die. I've left everything to you, and if I die, you'll get the lot, the house and my money." Well, I didn't know what to say. I looked at my shoes. She kept talking with tears in her eyes. "The only thing you won't get is a painting I used to have. You can't have it because it's gone, stolen. It was in my family for a long time. It was worth a lot of money, very valuable. It was a painting of this house, and I wanted you to have it." I pretended not to notice her tears. "Who stole it, Auntie?" I asked. "I don't know," she answered. "I went away to England for 2 years, and a man called Old Ned lived in the house and looked after everything for me. But when I came back, he was dead, and the painting was gone." I asked Auntie Flo how Ned died. "I don't know," she said. "I found him on the toilet at the bottom of the garden. He'd been there for a year. There wasn't much left of him, just a skeleton, sitting on the toilet." Oh, well, that was nice. That was very nice. Now I had to go and sit on an outside dunny where someone had died. I didn't like going to that loo at the best of times. You had to walk down a long path overgrown with weeds. Trees stuck out and scratched your face. When you got inside, it was very dark. There was no light globe. There were cobwebs and no toilet paper. Just a nail on the wall with newspaper hanging on it. It wasn't even worth reading the paper. It was only the age. Very boring. Those cobwebs had me worried too. There could be spiders. Redback spiders. And redbacks are poisonous. I knew that song about redbacks on the toilet seat. It wasn't funny when your pants were down, I can tell you that. Redbacks, cobwebs, stories about skeletons and no one around. I didn't like sitting there with that door closed, especially at night. Oh, at night it was creepy. One day I was in the Dunny paying a visit. There wasn't much to do. I started counting holes in the wall. A lot of knots had fallen out of the wood. They were little round holes that let in a bit of light. I'd counted up to hole number 20 when I saw something that made my hair stand on end. An eye was looking at me, staring at me through the hole. It was not just any old eye. I could see right through it. I could see the trees on the other side of it. It was not a human eye. I pulled up my pants so fast. No one's ever pulled up their pants that fast before. I ran up the path, back to the house like greased lightning. I told Auntie Flo about it. She didn't believe me. Oh, rubbish, she said. There's nothing down there. It's just your imagination. You can imagine how I felt. Very nice. Oh, very nice indeed, I don't think. I was not going down there again. No way. Just think about how you'd feel at the bottom of the garden, in the dark, sitting on a dunny where someone had died. Not only died, but turned into a skeleton. Then there were cobwebs, redback spiders, and eyes. Eyes, looking at you through holes in the walls. I made up my mind. I wasn't going down there again, ever. I didn't go there for a week. Then I started feeling a bit crook. I felt terrible. "You're not looking well," said Auntie Flo. "You've not been regular, have you, dear? You better have some medicine." The medicine fixed me up all right. I got the runs. I spent most of the day sitting down there. But what I was really worried about were the nights. Sure enough, it happened. I had to go to the loo in the night. I took a torch and went down slowly down the dark path. The trees were rustling and something seemed to be moaning. I told myself it was a bird. I hoped it was a bird. It had to be a bird. At last, I reached the Dunny. I went inside, shut the door and locked it. I'd no sooner sat down than something terrible happened. The torch slowly went out. The batteries were flat as a tack. Now, I think I should tell you what happens to me when I get scared. My teeth start to chatter. They go clickety-clack very loudly. So there I was, sitting in the dark with my teeth chattering. I tried to stop it, but I couldn't. You must have been able to hear the noise a mile away. I started to think about creepy things. Eyes, bats, vampires, murderers. I was scared to death. I wanted to get out of there. My teeth were chattering louder and louder. And then the moon came out, and moonbeams shone through the space on the top of the door. I felt a bit better, but only for a second. I looked up and my heart froze. A face was looking at me. An old man's face. He had a beard and he was wearing an old hat. He just stood there staring at me over the top of the door. And even worse, well, much worse, the moon was like shining right through him. I could see all the way through him. He didn't block out the moonlight at all. I couldn't get out. The old man was on the other side of the door. I was trapped. I started screaming out, "Auntie Flo! Auntie Flo! Help! A ghost!" The face looked startled. Then it just disappeared. I didn't waste any time. I kicked open the door and ran out. I fell flat on my face. I'd forgotten to pull my pants up. When I finally pulled up my pants, the ghost had gone. I tore up the path, screaming out for Auntie Flo. Auntie Flo didn't believe me. She knew I was scared, but she didn't believe there was a ghost. "Nonsense," she said. "There's no such thing as ghosts. I've been going down there for 60 years and I've never seen one." I tried to make the best of it. I smiled. A weak smile, but a smile. Auntie Flo did not smile back. She was staring at me. Her mouth was hanging open. "Bob," she shouted. "Bob, one of your teeth is missing. One of your beautiful teeth." I put my hand up to my mouth. Sure enough, a front tooth was gone. broken, clean off. I knew what had happened. My teeth had chattered so hard that the tooth had broken. That ghost had done it now. I was starting to get mad with that ghost. Auntie Flo was upset. "You must have done it when you fell over," she said. She put some new batteries in the torch, then we went out to look for the tooth. There was no sign of it. There was no sign of the ghost either. The next day we went to the dentist. He had bad news for me. "You'll have to have a plate," he said. "The tooth is gone and the piece that's left is split." "What's a plate?" I asked. "Like false teeth," he told me. "But you'll only have one tooth that's false, and you'll have to look after it. They cost a lot of money, so don't lose it. Clean it every night and put it in water when you go to bed. And don't break it by biting string or hard objects." The plate cost $200. Can you believe that? $200? Auntie Flo had to pay up. It was a lot of money. She made sure I looked after that tooth. I had to clean it every night and every morning. She checked on it when I was in bed. Every night she looked at the tooth in the glass of water. And if the plate wasn't clean, she made me do it again. She wouldn't let me take it out of my mouth in the daytime. She thought I might lose it. That ghost had caused a lot of trouble. I'd lost a tooth. Auntie Flo had wasted $200. I didn't see the ghost for about a month. I stayed away from the bottom of the garden at night time. I only went in the day. He didn't come in the day anymore. All the same, I made my visits very, very short. I did a lot of thinking about that ghost. Who was he? Why was he hanging around a Dunny? I asked Auntie Flo about old Ned who had died down there. "Auntie Flo," I said one day, "you know that old man that lived here when you lost your painting? What did he look like?" She looked sadly at the place where a painting used to hang, and then she said, "He always wore an old hat, and he had a beard, a long grey beard." I knew at once that the ghost was old Ned. I felt a bit sorry for him. Fancy having your skeleton sitting on a dunny for a year. All the same, I wished he'd go away. I didn't want to see him again. But of course, I did. One night, I just had to go. You know what I mean. I got my torch out, and I went into the dark, down to the bottom of the garden. I was scared, really scared. My teeth began to chatter again. They were really clacking. I was worried about my plate. With all the clacking, it might break. I took it out and held it in my hand. There I sat, tooth in hand, and my real teeth chattering enough to wake up the dead. I left the dunny door open. If old Ned showed up, I wanted to get away quickly. I didn't want to be trapped. I did the job that I went for. Then I pulled up my pants, reached up, and pulled the chain. As I did, I could feel someone watching me. My hand started to shake, badly. The plate slipped out of my hand and into the dunny. In a flash, it was gone. Flushed down the loo. When I turned around, I saw old Ned standing there. I could see right through him, through his hat, through his beard, through his hands and his face. He looked very sad indeed. I didn't run. I didn't feel quite so frightened now that I could see him properly. He was trying to say something. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out, and he was pointing to the roof of the dunny. I looked up, and there was nothing to see, just a rusty old roof. "What do you want?" I heard myself say. "Why are you hanging around this loo all the time?" He couldn't hear me. He just kept pointing at the roof of the dunny, and then he started to fade. He just started to fade away in front of my eyes. Then he was gone. Vanished. I walked slowly up the path. I wasn't scared anymore, not of the ghost. He looked harmless. But I was scared of something else. I was scared of what Auntie Flo was going to say when she found that my plate had gone. The next morning, I jumped out of bed early. I wrote a note for Auntie Flo. It said, "Auntie Flo, gone for a ride on my bike. I will be back for tea. Bob." So I set out to look for my tooth. I wanted to find it before Auntie Flo knew that it was gone. Now, I knew where the sewerage farm was. It was 20 miles away to the north. My tooth had gone north. It was a long way. The road was very dusty and hot. The paddocks were brown. All the cows were sitting under the trees in the shade. There was no shade for me, but I kept riding. By lunchtime, I could tell I was getting close to the sewerage farm. I could smell it. It was a bad smell. A terrible smell. As I rode closer, the smell got worse. At last, I reached the farm. It had a high wire fence around it. Now, inside were a lot of brown ponds. In the middle of the ponds was a hut. Inside the hut, I could see a man. He was writing at his desk. That man had the worst job in the world. He was sitting down, working in the middle of a terrible stink, a shocking stink. He didn't seem to mind. I held my nose with one hand and knocked on the open door. "Come in," he said. "What can I do for you?" He was a little bald man with glasses. He looked friendly. He didn't seem to care that I was holding my nose. "Excuse me," I said. "Have you seen a plate? Has a plate come through the sewer?" It was hard to talk with my hand holding my nose. It sounded as if I had a cold. "A plate?" he said. "No, a plate could not fit through the pipes. It'd be too big." Not that sort of plate," I told him. "Not a dinner plate. A mouth plate? A plate with a tooth on it. Yeah, a false tooth." "Ah," he said and smiled. "Well, why didn't you say? False teeth? Oh, yes, we have false teeth." He went over to the wall, and there were a lot of baskets there. They all had labels. One said pens and pencils, another said watches. He brought over a basket and dumped it in front of me. It was full of false teeth. They were all dirty and they were brown. The man gave me a pair of tongs and I started to sort through them slowly. I felt a bit sick. I felt like throwing up. At last I found a plate with only one tooth on it. My precious plate. It looked yucky. It was brown and slimy and it stank. I thought of where it had been and where I found it. I didn't know if I could ever put it in my mouth again. I wrapped it up in my handkerchief and rode slowly home. When I reached home, I went up to the bathroom. I scrubbed the plate. I scrubbed it and scrubbed it. It got a lot cleaner, but it was still the wrong colour. The tooth was not white enough. Next, I boiled it in water, but it was still a bit grey. That was as clean as I could get it. I put it on the table and looked at it. I looked at it for a long time. Then I picked it up and closed my eyes and shoved it in my mouth very quickly. Old Ned had a lot to answer for. He had caused a lot of trouble. But all the same, I felt sorry for him. It couldn't be fun hanging around a toilet. I wondered why he was there and why he looked so sad. I decided that I would go and see him and have a talk. I wasn't scared of him anymore. I waited till Auntie Flo had gone to bed. Then I took out my torch and set out for the Dunny. It was very windy and wild. Clouds were blowing across the moon. The trees were all shaking. Leaves blew into my face. It seemed like a long way to the bottom of the garden. And when I reached the Dunny, it was empty. There was no sign of old Ned. It was cold out in the wind, so I went inside and sat down. I waited for a long time. The wind started to get stronger. It blew the door shut with a bang. And then the moon went behind a cloud. Oh, it was very, very dark. The Dunny started to shake. The wind was screaming and howling. The walls started to lean over. The wind was blowing the Dunny over with me in it. There was a loud crash and the whole thing collapsed. It fell right over on its side. Everything went black. When I woke up, the wind had stopped. My head hurt, but I was all right. No broken bones. Someone was bending over me. It was old Ned. He was just the same as before. I could see right through him, but he was smiling. He looked happy. He was pointing to the roof of the Dunny. It was all smashed up, and so I went over and I had a look. Under a piece of tin was a picture frame. It was Auntie Flo's missing painting, the stolen painting. I picked up the painting, put it under my arm. Auntie Flo would be glad to get it back, very glad. I started to say thanks to Ned, but something was happening. He started to float up in the air. He was going straight up. He looked happy to be leaving the earth. He floated up towards the moon. He grew smaller and smaller. At last, I couldn't see him anymore. He was gone. And I knew he wouldn't be coming back. Auntie Flo was very pleased to get her painting back. She was so happy that she cried. She hung it on the wall in its old spot, and she kept looking at it all the time. I didn't tell her about old Ned. She wouldn't believe it anyway. But I think I know what happened. Old Ned stole the painting. He hid it in the Dunny roof, When he died, he was in limbo. He was not in this world because he was dead. He could not go back to the next world because he had done something bad. So he had to hang around the outside loo, hoping that Auntie Flo would find her painting. Well, now that she'd got it back, he was free to go. When he floated off into the air, he was going to a happier place, well, wherever that is. Auntie Flo put in a new toilet, an inside one. It was all shiny and clean, a push-button job, no cobwebs, spiders or ghosts. Well, that's just about the end of the story. Oh, except for one thing. One day, I was looking at Auntie Flo's lost painting. It was a painting of her house in the old days, when it had just been built. It had no trees around it. Out the back, you could see the outside Dunny, with the door open. I looked very closely at that Dunny in the picture. Someone was sitting in it. Sitting down. I went and got a magnifying glass and I looked again. It was old Ned, with his hat and his long beard. He looked happy. He had a smile on his face and one eye closed. He was winking at me.